I want to embellish a little bit on the story here. And so I'm going to zoom way out because there's a point to this story. Then I'm going to zoom way in because my title is Technology Evangelist, so I have to talk about the technology. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the engagement model that we just heard about from Linda, okay? So the first zoom out is this. Let me go. Okay. I urge you not to do this search in Google because I was going to talk about artificial intelligence, so I wanted to look for a good graphic. And I go, of course, like you probably would, I go into Google, I look for AI is hot, and forgot that AI, is a very common word in Japanese and Chinese. So I found a lot of images that I didn't actually expect. So I actually then refined it to artificial intelligence is hot, okay? And the reason I wanted to do that is because AI has been around for actually quite a long time. And for those of you that have as many gray hairs as I've got and as old brain cells as I've got, there's been a number of waves in the whole introduction of this notion of machines are smart. Machines can eventually do stuff that humans can do, okay? If you go all the way back to when this all started in the 50s and 60s, there were like two camps, okay? It was actually two professors just a few hundred yards from each other. There was John McCarthy, who came up with a symbolic programming language called Lisp. And then there was Doug Engelbart, who was the very first to implement something called word processing, multimedia, windowing. He invented the mouse. He invented revision management. He invented clicks. Okay, this is the guy that invented hypertext. Okay, this is way back in the 60s. So these two guys had diametrically opposite views of what our machines could do. One was we could actually replace humans eventually. The other was we can actually augment humans, okay? Let me just say, personally, I like the augmentation story, okay? I don't want to be replaced anytime soon, and I suspect many of you also don't want to. But let's look at this particular slide here. This particular slide says that right now, it's almost scaldingly hot, okay? And amazingly, the blue curve indicates those technologies that I think Forrester, as reported by Forbes, as blogged by Artificial Intelligence Blog, says that we got speech recognition, virtual agents, machine learning, hardware. This is all stuff that's actually proving itself very, very, very useful currently, okay? In the next tier, the stuff that's moderately successful, are those things like robotic process automation, image analysis, been around for years, text analytics, natural language processing. These I mentioned because these are all very key elements of what we've built into our platform, okay? So the time is really pretty interesting. eGain was formed, I'm gonna go to the next slide here. This slide says eGain was formed right around the end of the 1990s. I think it was about 97, 98, 99. I should actually look this up. But it was formed right at the end of one of these, what's called valleys of disillusionment, okay? What happened was in the early stages when machines could start processing information and could start doing things that looked intelligent, man, everybody jumped on board, right? You had rule-based systems like eMycin doing diagnostics for medical applications. You had product configurators making complex computer configurations at DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation. So it went through a lot of hype. And that's when DARPA formed the IPTO, Information Processing Technology Office. But then look at what happened, okay? Without sufficient progress, even with a lot of funding, there was some disillusionment in the 70s. That trough was actually quite long, okay? It lasted until about the mid-80s. Until the Japanese decided to take $100 million with 40 other samurai and said, we're gonna actually build the Prolog machine. And that's about the time in the early 80s that I actually took a couple of years of artificial intelligence classes. That's when I got onto the bandwagon, okay? Right around the time that it got to be hot again, okay? So I missed one of those valleys, but I certainly caught another one, okay? Because again, the expectation was so high that, again, funding sort of dried up after a little bit, okay? Now, on the upswing, that's when eGain was formed, okay? So now eGain and I are really in a position now to really take advantage of what's happening. There's another quote I wanted to give you from Doug Engelbart, which is when he was actually, I guess, critiqued by someone, saying, you know, you're just a visionary, you haven't actually built any real systems. And Doug responded by saying, being a visionary is hard work, okay? You gotta actually maintain that course that you know is correct and wait until the time is right. I think eGain's time is just about here. Okay, so I'm actually pretty excited. Anyway, I wanted to give you that historical context because without that context, we're again gonna go through another hype cycle. And I wanna make sure we prevent that, okay? I also looked and I found this one slide. It's a pretty ugly slide, but the reason I put it here is because you notice this little box toward the right here. It says AI military systems used effectively in Desert Storm. I actually didn't know this, but somebody had actually written about it. That was my project. We actually built systems that tried to look at all kinds of information, real-time information, mapping information, imagery information, human information, messages, and tried to find things that were dangerous to us, could move, and didn't want to be found, okay? And it turned out to be quite useful, okay? So in other words, if we're actually going to go and try and eliminate these threats in a search area without applying the systems that we built, we would have spent 30 or 40 times more resources looking for them than we actually did. So it was actually quite a good payoff. So because we've been around for a while, and we've actually had that visionary position, we were actually delivering systems that actually implemented all this for the last 20 years, okay? We're actually one of the oldest companies that have had proven, working artificial intelligence systems for the last 2 decades. And as a result, the product footprint is actually quite broad. Internal to this, in that middle column, are 2 aspects that have actually been AI, arguably, for the last decade at least, okay? And that is, we have a chatbot that's been deployed in a number of different places. And we've also had a logic engine that actually attempts to help you solve process problems, complex process problems. So unlike the early generations of this, where you had to code rules very, very carefully, and you had to look at whether, you know, the left-hand side or the right-hand side matched these different rules, what this engine could let you do is avoid all of that, not take a tree-based approach, but just look at matching patterns based on any random sequence of questions that you wanted to offer as an agent or that the customer wanted to answer, interacting with them, okay? And then on the left, because we are a customer engagement hub, we've built out a really wide number of channels now. You know, mail and chat were what we got started with, but recently, with the last few years, we've added Facebook, we've added Twitter, we're adding Instagram, we're adding Apple Business Chat, we're adding just something almost every release, okay? In addition to which, we have co-browse. Not many customers have a co-browse. Companies have a co-browse. We have a call management solution, right? So all of the engagement channels are supported now by these intelligent components, the virtual agent and the guided process, in order to actually help both agents and customers, and that's what we get for being around for a couple of decades, okay? It's very exciting also, since you've heard a lot about the analytics component, that's where we actually can take all of this operational data, feed it back, and now, with the latest release, start learning from that corpus of knowledge. So I wanted to give you a deeper look into the evolution, but I wanted to give you this historical context first, okay? Now, if you take a look at yesterday's call center, arguably the IVR is actually fronted at that first intersection, but if you ignore that for a second, this is what a call center would look like, okay? You would have a call coming in, you'd have to make some intelligent decisions about it, you'd have to either handle it or get it to the next level of the menu, or you then route it to an agent if available, okay? Not surprising, many of you are running this today. Against that backdrop, typically people in the last decade have been saying, let's introduce a digital channel to this. So what happens is you've still got the IVR, you've still got the live agents, but now we take a chat option offered via a click-to-chat button on the website, and it then takes a routing function to assign it to the right chat agent. Now, initially, you'll see that these are not actually very integrated, but that's a very natural, very common sense thing to do. So that's what it looks like in stage 1. In stage 2, with our virtual assistant, we now have the ability to back that chat as a set of intelligent components. So we have a virtual assistant that actually can automate the first 5 or 6 questions you would ask. You know, what are the 4 digits of your social? What are you calling about, or what are you asking for assistance on? And then we also have those 2 pieces that I mentioned from that earlier slide, right? The virtual assistant number 1 and the guided process number 2. Those can assist the agent or be offered to the customer in a self-service portal. So what gets interesting is now, in the next stage, we actually want to take all of that AI, all of that smarts, all of that process guidance, and support not just the chat sessions, not just the live sessions, not just the automated sessions, but also put it in front of the live voice agents as well. And not just the voice agents, obviously, the co-browse, all the other channels that I talked about. Also here, we have the ability to determine, are we doing a good job? Do we need to escalate to someone that's live? Or are we doing a good enough job of really understanding what the customer's issue is that we can now hand it off to a guided process and actually take the agent off to the side, let the agent just watch the session, but then let a guided process or let a bot just handle the rest of that session with supervision, okay? So that's what we're doing. As Arvind mentioned, now we've got the intent prediction that can actually front every request coming in, and we've got on the back end a guided process. So almost end to end, we have an option of taking the automated response, determining what we can do with it, giving an automated solution, or giving it to a live agent, or handing it off to one of the other channels, okay? So this is what's exciting, okay? We were able to do this because there were so many dots already in the eGain platform. We had chat, we had virtual assistant, we had guided process, we had the analytics. Now, with this version 18 that we're working on, these components are actually real. We're actually now implementing these as we speak. In customer engagements, I'm talking about, not just in the product, okay? Here's another glimpse at our learning model, okay? Initially, what you got are just reports, this little pink box on the left, okay? So as you run the system, you get reports. Reports are being given to your live agents or your supervisors or your business, and that's good. You can actually manage this kind of in person, manually. The next stage of that is to take the data and put it in front of an analyst, visualize it, pivot it, look at it in various different ways, okay? And that agent will then come up with new ways to improve the operations of the system. What's exciting is now we're working on a mode where we now have machine training looking at the operational data so that it can get very, very good at the classification understanding and intent prediction. So this is the model we want to apply to almost every aspect of our architecture. Whether it's routing, whether it's intent prediction, whether it's email understanding, whether it's a payment issue, this is the model we're actually beginning to use to guide all the roadmap items that we've got. So that was kind of a deep dive into the technology. I understand some of you may feel that the diagrams I'm showing here are a little bit dry. Let me back up a little bit now and give you a different sense. The term artificial intelligence is a very dangerous term. People often forget the A stands for artificial, okay? It means it's not real intelligence, okay? It's something we're approximating in order to look like it's rational and it's logic-based. So that's what gives us a reminder to say we have to have the right expectations. Remember the valley of disillusionment that I was referring to, okay? If we have the right set of expectations by saying, if you have the data, if you understand the data, if you know what it can tell you, and then you can automate that, that's a reasonable approach to an artificial intelligence project, okay? So that's the emphasis on the A in artificial intelligence. In the next slide, I want to have the emphasis on the I, the actual intelligence. And I'm going to introduce it this way. I have babies. Okay, I had 3 babies. How many of you actually have had kids? I'm sure you guys have had some experience with kids here, okay? I want to actually remind you that these kids, these entities, are intelligent agents, okay? But on day 0, I don't expect to hand this baby a request to solve my password reset problem, right? I don't expect to hand this baby an SOW and say, okay, you gotta live to this SOW, otherwise, you're out, okay? So the point is, they have intelligence, but that intelligence needs to be developed over time. What keeps us from tossing them out is, initially, of course, they're cute, okay? It's the shiny new object syndrome, okay? That we want to keep it around, but they're born with an initial set of typically very little knowledge. Obviously, you know where I'm going with this, right? They learn over time. So that means have a little patience, okay? We're not going to expect something in 2-3 weeks for, whatever. It's got to be kind of a reasonable approach to watching this thing attain skills. And not only does it require time, but it requires care. You can say it's love, okay? But I'll just use the word care, which means you're investing in this baby. You're feeding it, you're actually teaching it, you're guiding it, make sure it doesn't touch the stove, These are all practices that allow this entity to grow and then to start performing and start just delighting you over time. So obviously, you know where I've painted this metaphor is when we get involved with artificial intelligence, think of it very differently than you used to think about software. In software, you used to say, it's going to do these things, and if it doesn't do it, I'm going to return it, or I'm going to actually, write a bad review, whatever that is, okay? Because that capability is fixed. Fundamentally different is the notion that artificial intelligence, particularly chatbots, particularly, the guided processes that we're trying to describe here, they are going to get smarter and smarter over time as we partner together, as we invest in them, as we teach them, as they learn, right? As we feed more data through the agent, as we feed more data through the model, through the learning. So that's why we at eGain, and Linda described it so effectively, have a way of engaging that's now even got its new name, the value assurance model process. Right. Sorry, it's at the end of the day here. So what we're saying is we don't want to do business the old way. We want to partner with you so that we can actually show you our approach is what we are actually engaging you with, okay? It's not the actual data. It's not a certain specific level of performance, okay? What we want to do is approach so that we can actually attain this learning curve and not a fixed, stated, specified level of performance. It's a very different model, okay? So what we want to do is work together in an agile fashion where we say, give us whatever data you can give, sanitized, cleaned up, whatever, okay? And within 30 days, we will run it through our model and we'll attempt to learn from it and then use another data set, we'll actually test it. And if what we've been able to extract and what we've been able to model meets a certain threshold, okay, then let's get into a deeper conversation. If we haven't been able to do that, then you're free to walk away and say, not yet ready, okay? That's a very intelligent decision, by the way, okay, because every problem is different, okay? We don't know a priori in this industry, with that system, with that set of integrations, with that data model, whether we're gonna hit the 80% accuracy or precision rate, right? We have to work with your data. We have to work with what's been sanitized. We have to look at the way you've classified the data and whether or not those classifications have actually been accurate. In fact, one of our customers, when we said, hey, if you've got dispositions or classifications on these data, we'll run our training set through and we'll see how well we match your data. And they said, we don't even know how well we did this disposition or we did this classification. So they wanted us to do this learning so that they could actually figure out whether they did a good job. Very interesting engagement question. So I really want to stress, this is a different engagement model. It's a partnership engagement model. It's not a, here's what we're going to achieve and, we're out if we don't do it, okay? We want to get involved with you so that you see what's happening on a week-by-week or maybe even day-by-day basis, so that we can actually see the improvements in real time, work on the prioritization, learn, what next to teach it, and then engage. Here's another thing, okay? When you actually start the run model, somebody has actually talked before about the run all the way up to the transform, right? But when you actually start running and engaging customers through all these channels, you're piling up a lot of this data. That data then becomes available for all of these particular techniques, all of these particular approaches. We need to work with that data. We need to work with your data, and we will use the backdrop of our experience with other customers in your industry, okay? So we actually have a running start, but obviously it's going to be very, very dependent on your particular data. Here's another thing I want to stress, okay? When you're really implementing a process like this, you got pretty much 5 choices, okay? I'll introduce the 5. Number 1 is do nothing, okay? It's a safe choice, right? Costs you nothing, okay? Number 2 is you can actually build this internally. Also another fine choice, right? Every large customer probably has gone through this. When I was working at another very large CRM company, that was our number 1 competitor, by the way, was internal projects. Number 3 is you could go with a very well-known, very well-established consulting business, right? The Andersons and you name it. And they'll engage with you. They'll send you 5 to 20 people, and you'll pay a few $1 million, and you'll have a 2-year plan on how you actually implement this. Again, I'm not knocking it. They do a good job, but sometimes they can be expensive, and sometimes it can take a while. The next option is you could actually find a very smart, very hot, VC-funded, brand new startup that's the flavor of the month, okay? And we've actually seen hundreds of these companies come and go. And they're hot, yes, they're very smart, but they don't have the depth of industry and domain knowledge that we've managed to accumulate over the last 20 years, okay? And what we're finding is we don't pitch ourselves as a technology company. We utilize technology, we develop technology, but we're primarily customer engagement in various specific domains. And that's where we've got the knowledge. That's where Ian and Linda and our PS people have spent years and years, hundreds of engagements, learning what works, learning what doesn't work, okay? So you can go with that, startup model where you don't actually leverage our expertise, or clearly, the last option, you can work with us. We're not that expensive, okay? We're not gonna ask you millions and millions for a 30-day engagement. In fact, that 30-day engagement that Ashley talked about and Linda talked about, that's no risk to you financially, okay? It just means give us a little bit of data, give us a little bit of time, okay? Not even a lot of time, okay? And it's not the startup. We're not just a startup that just got started in the last couple of years with $6 million of VC funding. We've actually been around for a while. So that's what we wanted to indicate is we're kind of like this Goldilocks. We're not too small, we're not too large. Engage with us because we feel we understand your industry and we have the right engagement model. We think of agents, we think of artificial intelligence as our baby, okay, our joint baby, okay? We want to nurture it, Linda's word. We want to grow it, we want to feed it, we want to make it effective, okay? And here's the other mistake that these startups could make, okay? We're beyond the stage where we engage with a customer, you tell us what you want, we just run off and do it, okay? It's not because we're non-responsive. It's because we know we have to ask the deeper questions. We have to ask what's really behind that first request. We've answered enough of these RFIs and RFPs to know that there's a certain request that what they think is the solution, but there may be alternate approaches to it. I'll give you a case example. My team implemented a product called CoBrowse a few years ago. And about 2 or 3 months ago, I was asked to get engaged with a customer call where our account team said, we don't know how to satisfy this requirement. They're asking for quite a lot. And I heard the set of requirements and I said, yeah, we don't do that. And in fact, nobody can do that. So I said, okay, set up a call. And we got onto this call. And the customer heard why we couldn't do it, but more importantly, why I was able to lay out for them, I and the team were able to lay out for them why nobody could satisfy those requirements. You got to dig deeper than the initial set of questions. So you have to then understand what the real issue is, and then prioritize, as Linda was saying, what needs doing. And experience will tell us, what order, what amount of time, what order of investment, what dependencies you really want to start factoring in there. And then, of course, in the wrap-up, make sure it's well documented, make sure you can train people on it, make sure you can sustain it, maintain it, all these deployment issues that Linda talked about. So that's why I wanted to give you that sense of what this AI value in 30 days meant, okay? It's not just that, hey, just throw us your data. It's that we, with our engagement model, with our experience, with the fact that we've looked at other people in this, probably looked at other people in your space, and actually seen what the data shows us. That's what we're saying. That's no risk to you. We will actually take the risk ourselves because we think we have a good process, we think we have a good set of tools, and we want to make sure that that is proven before we ask you to take any risk or investment on your part, okay? So that's the message, is we want to make it that easy to work with eGain, okay? So thank you very much for your time and attention. I appreciate it.